Now, most e-commerce brands are sitting on $500,000 to $1 million a month inside Klavio and have no idea. And the problem really isn't the email, it's the system. And what usually happens is everyone has a few basic flows, they blast everyone, there's no real segmentation or any optimization of the actual account, which typically results in millions of dollars left on the table, and more importantly, a clunky user journey that gets your customers not coming back for more, no matter how good your product actually is, right? And so if you're wondering who I am, I'm Tarun. In the last 4 years, we've generated over $200 million for our clients, specifically with Shopify and Klavio. They, in fact, refer a lot of business to us, specifically because we know how to use their software really, really well. And our entire objective has always been to build retention systems that convert and retain customers. And what you'll learn today is pop-ups that actually convert cold traffic, how we can take your flows and to help nurture and convert customers 24/7, build out campaigns that actually print revenue for your business. I'm going to cover how segmentation can actually protect your deliverability and make you more revenue while being more relevant. And just to wrap everything up, we're going to walk you through the SMS and email ecosystem that you should be building for your brand if you want it to win in 2026. Starting with pop-ups, why pop-ups matter. Most businesses actually have pop-ups that convert at a 1 to 2%. And for healthy brands, you can convert it to maybe a 4 to 5%. And we've seen some businesses convert as high as a 10 or 15%, right? And what's interesting is the gap between the percentages can lead to 6, 7, and sometimes even 8 figures per year, right? And what that means is, let's say I have 100,000 sessions or 1,000,000 sessions, or we'll use 100,000 for the example. At 6%, I have 6,000 people who opt into my list. At 12%, I have 12,000 people who opt into my list, right? And so the massive gap means I now have double the amount of sessions going through my automations, going through my campaigns, specifically because we've optimized pop-ups so much. And now we're able to increase the amount of sessions within each of the automations, getting these customers to buy it, right? What's wrong with most pop-ups is that everyone has a generic 10% off, and it almost always fires instantly. It's intrusive, and there's always a bad mobile experience, and there's no value beyond any of the discounts that the brands provide, right? And so in order to create a high converting pop-up, you need to have something that triggers after 8 to 10 seconds. Also have something like an exit intent, right? Have some ownership psychology, things like you've got 10% off, intent-based call to actions like join the drop list, or also creating some clear visual hierarchy. I'm going to pull up Klavio just so you get an example of what that looks like, and I'll walk you through it right now. So just as an example, here's an account with multiple different opt-ins. As you can see, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we had specific opt-ins for that. But even with our normal opt-ins, we do have things like the exit intent, the initial offers. During the initial offers, we have a couple behaviors that you can actually copy and replicate today. Within the targeting and behaviors, we add things like a time delay, and I'll actually make sure they've scrolled a certain amount, and then we only display these opt-ins if they've scrolled or if all the conditions have actually been met, right? And so that means every rule has to be met in order to reach that. From there, we're able to, again, not show them the sign-up forms in case they don't actually want to opt in. And the beauty of it is we try to isolate each of our device types. So we create sign-up forms specifically for mobile and some specifically for desktop as well. And so I'd highly recommend having mobile and desktop separate sign-up forms, and then having a offer that's clear, readable, easy to understand, with a couple conditions to make sure that it's not intrusive during the on-site shopping experience. There are several different pop-up offer types that you can use. We try percentage discounts, mystery gifts, quizzes, VIP drop lists, bundles, giveaways. And for your brand, it really comes down to what you're willing to do. In most instances, percentage discounts works really well, or mystery gifts works really well. However, there are a lot of businesses that we work with, like hobby stores, and when they're doing even 5-10 million a month, some of these guys, they just can't give away any margin, and they don't want to give away discount codes because, let's say you're selling Pokemon cards, you don't really have much margin on being the middleman. And so instead, what we'll do in order to create a hype is find something that's super, super valuable. Let's say it's like a specific high value Pokemon card that's worth even $5,000. Instead of giving 10% off to everyone when you're doing over $1 million a month, you're probably giving away more than that in just discount codes. So instead, what we've done is just find the most incentivizing item and get people to opt in on the list. And now they actually have a reason to stay because they feel like they'll continuously be opted in for a different giveaway. You can integrate a couple tools like Yotpo, Alia, and other incentive tools in order to do things like cashback, loyalty, and actually create a robust system around the signup forms. Alia is a great tool if you want to make your signups easy because they do the A/B testing for you. What we test in order to make sure everything is actually solid and good for our brands, if we feel like the offer is good, is we continue to optimize the incentive, things like the call to action. So are the buttons good? Can we make it a different color? We test the design, the imagery, the location, and the timing. So make sure you optimize each and every one of these individual points in order to maximize the effectiveness of your pop-up form. Moving on to the next section, flows. Your flows matter a lot, right? They are your 24/7 automatic revenue system. It's something that keeps up with frequency and relevancy, right? So let's say a customer is shopping at 3 a.m. and then you have customers shopping at 12 p.m. You're able to make sure you continuously message the 3 a.m. shopper at midnight because you have automation set up to target them at the relevant times for them versus your noon shoppers where you can just continue sending them messages at noon, right? So it's more relevant to them. And our entire objective is to ensure that we are sending the right messaging to the right people at the right times. And with flows, you also set things like your first impression, right? So whether it's your abandoned checkout or your welcome series, you're able to set your first impression with your customers. A lot of brands will treat their flows like a discount machine, right? Instead of having multiple different touch points, they have one offer. They do a lot of discounts. They do no stories, no social proof, no brand reasoning. You don't understand why you're actually opted in, and they just treat it as a conversion mechanism, but they do it in a way where they're not actually building trust with the consumer. And your objective should be, how do I actually take this conversion mechanism and turn it into something that creates a lot of trust with my end consumer and actually makes my brand different? And so for a high converting welcome series, what we expect is 5 to 7 emails spaced 1 to 2 days apart, where you have things like your story, your founder intro, your social proof and the bestsellers, your product education, your reviews, actually building some sort of community, and then having a soft offer or a loyalty invite to get them to continue to buy into your brand with different incentives outside of discount. Here is an example of a welcome series where we're getting them to buy in. Vitality is a athletic wear brand that we work with. That clearly has like their opt-ins, and they have a specific to them welcome series where you're buying into the actual brand, right? So welcome to the Vitality family. We're doing imagery that actually captivates the audiences. We have images that resonate with the audiences as well, things that they see on the sources they come from, like TikTok, right? And then with emails, you have multiple different paths for different user types. So we don't need to get that advanced today. But what you can actually see here is for each email, we have relevant imagery to like the best-selling products, telling them their offers expires soon, talking about what makes each individual piece iconic in the sense that, you know, what do they buy into the brand for? Why is it loved by people who are similar to them? What is the best-selling product at the time? And then we go into things like founders notes, right? Like why we do what we do, images of the actual founders and how they actually came up with building this brand, which made it so that people are buying into the founders and not just the brand overall, right? Like we're actually buying into the story as to why they started it in the first place. And then we're giving them more concepts of like, how can you explore our brand better? Can we guide you around? Giving them reviews and testimonials to actually show how many people have purchased it, and we're not just this random online store. And that's something everybody should be doing when it does come down to your flows. And this touch point is something that really helps you build trust. If you look at some of these emails, you can see how it's really showing some of the product quality. Intent-based flows. So there is a lot of automations that you create based off the actual relevancy of the customer, like what are the exact action they're taking on your website right now. Things like the add it to cart, the browse abandonment, and the checkout abandonment are to recover high intent shoppers. We also are missing one on here called the site abandonment, which essentially does the same thing where you take people who are active on the site and then they don't necessarily take any other actions, right? And I'm going to show you some of these automations. Well, active on site being the first automation we're going to look at. Essentially what this does is when someone is on your site, but they don't view any products, they don't add anything to cart, they just are active on your site and they haven't taken any other action. Our objective is how do we get them to take another look, right? Actually educate them about the brand and let them know that there is something more than just a app. And so a lot of what the site abandonment email will be is just simply introducing like, you know, thanks for stopping by our site, take another look. Sometimes we'll put things like fun games to actually educate them on, you know, like let me help you find your automotive category. It's essentially being like a in-person salesperson. When you walk into a store, they're already trying to guide you on where exactly it is to go. We typically add like a 10 to 15 minute delay in case someone loses their attention and then now they are looking at site abandonment. The next automation is the browse abandonment. The browse abandonment is one step after that. Essentially, during the browse abandonment, what you have is a automation that targets customers who have now viewed a product, but they haven't necessarily taken any further action. They haven't added it to cart. They've just expressed intent in a certain product. And so we have these profile filters in place, like placed order 0 times since starting the automation, added to cart 0 times, checkout started, which essentially means if they've taken any actions past this, so they did add it to cart after this automation started, they'll automatically be removed from this automation. And then after 30 minutes, we have browse abandonment email 1, which just reminds them of exactly what they were looking at with a couple dynamic products. And then we have the are you thinking about it, to actually let them know that, hey, if you are taking a look at a certain product, then come check it again. It's just constant reminders to stay top of mind. Within a browse abandonment email 4, we typically try to add a discount to let them know that, hey, your product actually is moving fast and you need to actually purchase it. And if you are a new customer, you can actually qualify for a discount. With this company specifically, we didn't do that because they are the best price and they didn't really want to add any additional discounts. And then we also try to do things like review emails. So can I actually answer objections as to why someone wouldn't have proceeded to add it to their cart? Is it a pricing objection or is it other objections that I can actually answer for them? And in this case, it's like, are the colors actually accurate for my car? And we're able to answer that for them and let them know we have the highest quality images in order to achieve that result. The next email automation is added to cart. Added to cart is essentially when you actually add something to your cart and you do not proceed to checkout. And so our entire objective is letting them know, like, hey, did you forget something? Did you leave it behind because you added it in your cart? And then our next email is to let them know that you need to continue to check out. Our entire objective is to get them to the next stage where they go and start their checkout orders as well. And then the final automation, again, in this account specifically, we don't really have any discounts, but the final specific flow is abandoned checkout. This is the lowest and most bottom of funnel automation, where we are now targeting them based off of customers who are at checkout and haven't made an order yet. And we're letting them know, like, our cart is saved for you. We typically, if you were to preview this in a actual preview mode, you can actually see how it pops up with the products in place. And essentially our entire objective is get them to make their purchase and finalize essentially what they were looking for. In this automation, we add multiple things like to increase our credibility, things like the actual products itself, the reviews about the certain products, the incentives. We add multiple different incentives to get them across the finish line. Within email 2, we'll try to add one incentive. And then on the very end, around email 6 and 7, we'll add more incentives. And in between, we're doing things like reviews and building a lot of trust. For people who have purchased before, we make that automation a lot smaller because we're not giving them any incentives. And then within email 1, again, it's just reminders. For most businesses, what we try to do is test the gaps between each of the emails to ensure that they actually have a successful automation that is tailored to them. So if you are selling something that's higher ticket, you can increase the length between emails. If you're selling something that's lower ticket, you can decrease the length between emails for this automation, because it's, again, getting them from starting checkout to the finish line. So a lot of common flow mistakes that we see is that there's a lot of the same messaging for new and returning customers. As I showed you in the abandoned checkout, you need to have different messaging for returning customers and new customers. With new customers, your entire objective is, once they are introduced to your brand, because you want to make sure that you are running profitably, you want to ensure that they get across the line. And so if I have someone who has just signed up for email marketing and they haven't yet made a purchase, how can I just show them my brand and the experience of my company? For returning customers, it might be very different depending on the industry you're in. If you're selling saunas, you might want to sell accessories for returning customers, but let's say you're selling CPG goods and it's just a couple supplements, you might actually want to increase the supplement stack for your returning customer. And so your objectives change based on the industry you're in, and you want the messaging to reflect your objectives. Your flows should not look identical. We try to isolate each of the flows. You saw a couple flow filters in there. Our goal always is making sure that if they're in one automation and we're trying to get them to convert, they're not in any other automation, and there's a single objective for that automation. So if it's added to cart, we're just trying to get them to the next stage and not a complete conversion. A lot of people don't have conditional splits, right? So what tends to happen is if you don't have any logic within the automation, whether it's cart value, whether it's personas, then you create this same life cycle where you have no real dynamic messaging, and that messes with deliverability, and it also ruins your reputability if the customers are all getting the same sort of discounts no matter what their purchasing behavior is. And then there's also always discounts too early. We actually try to avoid providing too many discounts, and we actually reward high value customers with offers rather than just spewing out discounts left, right, and center. So instead, you do want to do all these things where you're actually protecting exactly discounting for VIPs, adding logic based on purchase history, using different creatives per flow, and splitting new versus returning. Moving on to post-purchase automations, your entire objective here is to turn buyers into repeat customers, and this includes thank you emails, the how to use your product, the cross-sells and the upsells, as well as things like predicted data next order. For first purchase automations, you can make a ton of revenue simply by even having things like back in stock where customers understand what has been restocked and what hasn't. It can be as simple as saying, hey, the product that you were looking for is now back in stock, just based off of the stock level within Shopify. Similarly, we also make post-purchase automations that are based off of people placing order. And so let's say someone has made an order once, we actually thank them for their order and then let them know to get us a little bit more, right? And we'll create automations being like, hey, we have multiple stores. Here's what's trending within our stores. And we give them a lot more information because maybe they don't know too much about us. And so how can we build more trust to increase a more reputable purchase, right? If they have a great first experience with us, they're more likely to buy multiple times again. And then once they do buy again, we're also saying things like, you're back, right? Like we're actually recognizing the fact that they've purchased with us before. And then we are trying to make things really relevant to them. And so even in instances like this, we'll talk about collectibles that everyone's talking about. But what will be interesting about the post-purchase is we'll have, this is a cross-sell or upsell because we have dynamic blocks in here. And so it's really what's most catered to the customer who's reading it. And then they are incentivized to buy it again because you're reaching them at such a high trust section, right? And so sometimes we'll even add time delays, like wait 10 days, which means maybe they've placed the order and their order has been fulfilled and it's already reached their house. So as soon as they have received their order, we are now telling them to buy something more so that way, again, it's really based on what is working for them and making sure that we use that trust to then get more conversions and continue to increase that cycle. Campaigns and segmentation, this is a big one. Flows are more automatic revenue. Once you set them up, they actually continue to increase revenue for you. Campaigns are consistent, right? Consistently reach out to customers. You have a consistent influx of sessions within your site, which then allows you to convert more customers as well. Most brands think campaigns are just for sales, but if done right, they can actually build community. They can tell stories and they can keep engagement high between purchases so that your brand stays top of mind even when someone's not intending on buying. The key is to send to the right people, not just everyone on your list, right? And if you're blasting everyone, you're probably destroying your deliverability. And so in order to get the basics of segmentation down, you can use things like the Russian nesting doll method, which essentially just means if I have my 30-day engaged, my 60-day engaged, 90-day engaged customers, people who have clicked or opened my emails within the last 30, 60, or 90 days, you can continue broadening those segments. So let's say 30-day engaged customers are really having high clicks, high opens. I can then broaden it out to 60. And if they have high clicks, high opens, I can broaden it out to 90. And then you can stop when the performance stops dropping. So let's say your clicks are below 2% and your opens are below like a 50%. You can stop broadening out those segments. And for your full list sends, you just want to do that during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, major launches, and clearance sales. Typically, we also like to exclude people who have marked as spam and all the deliverability sort of benchmarks there. So if there's customers you think really wouldn't want to hear from you, we also exclude those people. With your VIP segment, you want to segment by spend, right? You can do things like checking the AOV, and typically what we try to do is 3 times the AOV. But the average AOV within the last 12 months means we have a VIP. And so let's say the average customer spends $500 every year. Then our VIP customers are people who spend $1,500 within the last 12 months. And the VIPs typically get special treatment like early access, exclusives, and priority communication. We also send specific campaigns to people who are almost VIP, like $1,000 instead of $1,500, and let them know they're $500 away from becoming a VIP. So it incentivizes them to buy without any discounts. Behavior segments, we also create segments based off of browsing behavior, collections viewed, products purchased, and then we send personalized campaigns to people who have based on these few details about them and how they're actually engaging with our site as well as our emails. If someone keeps looking at duffel bags, you can send them duffel bags. If someone keeps looking at a carbon fiber backpack, you can send them more products about carbon fiber, so that way you are narrowing it down to what the customer actually wants to see and not just what you believe the customer should see. We had a brand called Hobbiesville where one of the largest issues was simply the fact that they had so many different collections like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and there's a lot of very, very niche, very specific collectors who didn't want to hear about the other products, but they did want to hear about things like the Pokemons if they were a Pokemon fan. And adding that additional layer of segmentation increased revenue without actually having to send more. We were just sending more relevantly, and then also decrease the unsubscribes. You can get much deeper with this. Klavio has the ability to do things like machine learning segments, which is like predicted in next order. Let's say you have someone who's predicted to order order within the next 2 weeks, you can send them different messaging. Same thing with predicted gender, where you can see if someone's a male or a female, in case that matters for your brand, as well as creating things like age segments, right? If you want to have parents shopping for their kids, figuring out what age they are, storing that as a profile property, and then creating segments according to what their age is. So what do you actually do when you're sending campaigns, right? We have multiple different types of campaign styles, things like storytelling emails, launch emails for new products, as well as educational emails that educate customers on what the product is actually solving, but more importantly, why it matters to them, right? And so as an example of this one, we talk a little bit about how liver supplements help families and its real value, right? Like, how does it actually help you during temperature drops? How can liver actually help? What does it help with? Is it B12, zinc, the vitamin A, right? Like, how does it actually help you? And what do you need in order to get ready for things like the winter versus things that are more promotional? And so with this, theirs was more just saying, they aren't slashing prices for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. As I said, we're not large advocates for discounting. In this sense, they are just not a discount brand. But what they were able to say is subscribe and save, right? That's how you get the best pricing every day and always. You get real nourishment, and that's why we're not able to sacrifice pricing, because it sacrifices the quality. And it focuses a lot more on the actual product itself. And then we also have things like the launch emails, where we are focusing on specific launches, right? If it's focusing on gifting, if it's bundles, we're keeping that as the actual product focus for the email. And then once again, like more examples of this, an educational email on how to feel better during things like a menstrual cycle, which is what matters to their customers. And then going back to things like launches, we have a couple examples for that as well. So with campaign best practices, sending 3 to 4 times per week is normal. High engagement equals better deliverability. And again, relevance matters a lot more than the frequency in which you send. What's really important to keep in mind is a lot of people and brands are scared of annoying people. But if you're able to segment and send relevant campaigns consistently, come up with consistent ideas for things that interest customers, as well as keep them engaged and hooked and see why your brand and product needs to be top of mind, this actually doesn't deter the quality or brand equity that you actually have. You just have to remember you need to narrow it down to the people who matter at the current time. Are you sending the right messaging to them? And is the message you're sending to them relevant to them? What we try to do is treat every email as a first impression, because if someone just randomly decides to open your email for the first time, how can you make it so that when they open that first email, they feel like the next email needs to be better and you're able to deliver on that consistently? And so putting a lot of effort and time into each email matters quite a bit. So if you are limiting yourself, problem isn't how often you send, the problem is who you're actually sending to and what you're sending them. Moving on to SMS, most people kind of treat this underrated channel as something that is optional, but SMS has 98% open rates. SMS is perfect for time-sensitive things like flash sales, like abandoned checkout reminders, for shipping updates, VIP drops, urgent reminders. And the thing is, it's a lot more intrusive than email campaigns actually are, right? You have to use it a lot more strategically, or people will opt out fast. It's very easy to opt out of SMSs because you can just say text to stop. And with SMS, there's a lot of legal conditions that constrain you and your business from sending certain things. Recently, there was the alert for Texas where you can't actually market to them unless you have certain regulations resolved for and you're sending them the right messaging the right way. And so in order to actually cut through the noise and use this channel that not many brands actually get to use and harness properly, you want to ensure you actually have sharp, direct messaging while staying compliant within all the laws and legalities of actually sending out SMS texts, depending on the region as well as depending on each individual brand as well as industry. Common use cases for SMSs is things like back in stock alerts. Just let them know for the first time, like Hobbiesville is the example where you're just letting them know, hey, your product that you're looking for is ready and available for you. Order shipped, and letting them know statuses on each of their orders. A lot of people love to keep up with things that they've purchased. VIP only offers, letting VIPs know that they have something available to them, specifically because in this instance, they feel a lot more special than email. And honestly, there's a lot of things that I mentioned that if not executed right, they don't work really well, right? Like making sure you shouldn't be sending a campaign or a text message every campaign you're sending. You can't blast to everyone and not have any segmentation. You need to actually send what relevantly to each individual customer. And if they are not opening emails, you can always treat this as a secondary channel to communicate with them if you find they're not engaging with your other channels. And when both channels work together, the benefit is if someone abandons checkout and an email goes out in 1 hour and they still haven't purchased, you can send an SMS after so that you're hitting them in multiple different locations. Klaviyo fortunately has built an SMS, but there's multiple different tools that you can use if you want to have different feature sets. Now, the truth is you can do this all alone, but the problem is you'll probably hit a lot of roadblocks along the way, months of testing, lots of mistakes, deliverability issues, and tons of lost revenue. And so if you would like our team to do a full, complete audit where we walk you through all the principles I walk you through today and give you full context on what's happening within your account and how you can improve it, we'll audit things like your pop-ups, your flows, your segmentation, your campaigns, and your SMS, and show you exactly where you're leaving money on the table. And here's the thing. We've done this for hundreds of brands. We've done it for brands like Higher Health, where we increase email sales by 400%, to Noah Hawaii, which increased their owned revenue by 7,500%. And overall, we've generated over $200 million for e-commerce companies just using these best practices that hopefully we can apply to your brand. Thank you for watching. Let's scale your retention revenue. Book an audit below and let me know how you enjoyed this video.